Warning. The following video contains images and videos of killer clowns, chainsaw-wielding maniacs, maniacal killer clowns wielding chainsaws, and various other scary imagery, as well as a brief talk about possibly triggering activities. Please, discretion your viewers. Hey there everybody, Chris from Orlando here.
And Universal.
Ah! Universal? What are you doing here?
Well, Chris, I thought it was odd that you did your Halloween giveaway not based on some Disney villains or something of that ilk, but rather my Halloween Horror Nights. So I did some digging.
Oh, yeah?
And I found on my records a Mr. Chris F. Orlando working as a scare actor at Halloween Horror Nights 29.
Alright, fine, you got me. Yes, I was a scare actor at HHN.
Cool, so here's the deal. I want you to do a video about your experience working for the better side.
Hey, this is my channel. What if I refuse?
On all future Icon merchandise, I'll replace the usher with Lady Luck.
Oh, you son of a... Fine. Here's an average day of being a scare actor at Halloween Horror Nights. So first thing I want to bring up is that each cast schedule is going to be vastly different. For example, if you're a stay at Scream house, a house that opens up a little bit before the rest of the park opens, you're obviously going to get there earlier. And if you're an extremely popular house, like Stranger Things, you're going to be scheduled later. And the scare zones, I imagine, just have their own whole messy schedule. I, however, was neither of those kinds of houses. Nightingale's Blood Pit is where I called home for 2 months. So, I usually got to my break room around 5:30 after waking up at noon because your sleep schedule goes out the window when working this event. Even though my shift didn't actually start until about 6:15, I got there early for a couple reasons. It allowed me to get some food, see my friends on Cast A that I wouldn't be seeing for the rest of the night, and, most importantly, go to some of the early opening houses with my fellow Nightingales. It always puts us in the mood for spooking. So when it's time to actually clock in, you'll first report to your stage manager to say, "Hey, I'm here, please don't point me." And they'll also ask you to extend, just in case the night goes long. Nope. At which point, you'll go and get ready for your set. You gotta get your costume, you gotta get your mask, you gotta get your makeup. You'll just be barely ready in time with the hour they give you before your first set. Unless you're me. My costume was super light and easy to wear, and there was no mask, which was just fine by me. Whenever we were on break, I would see my castmates rip off their masks as soon as we were backstage, and I'm like, man, I'm glad I don't have to deal with mask fatigue. Thanks 2020 for keeping me humble. As for the makeup, that was probably the most relaxing part of the night. I just sat in my makeup chair as cuts and scratches were airbrushed onto my arms, which made it a real shame when the creative directors, halfway through the event mind you, were like, "Here, just take the spray bottle and spray some gunk on him." So while the gladiators were over yonder getting battle scars and rock hard abs, I was just getting sprayed like a misbehaving dog. I did try to convince them to give me the Carrie White special on the final night. However, it didn't work. Alright, you're all dressed up and ready to go. It's time for your first set. Each set is either going to be about 30 or more likely 45 minutes at a time. 45 minutes on, 45 off. Seems easy enough, right? After all, most jobs have you working for a couple hours before your first break. Well, most jobs don't have you doing lunges while staring into strobe lights every 5 seconds, so the fatigue can set in very quickly if you're not careful. You navigate your way through the backstage maze until you find your boo hole. Tag out your counterpart and let the spooking commence. So because no individual set is really different from the other until the end of the night, each of the different 24 beep, beep, beep will be different challenges that a scare actor will face on a different night. Challenges like convincing the 2/3 of you watching right now that aren't subscribed to subscribe for more behind the scenes videos. First, let's talk about the art of the scare. Number 1, choosing a target. During orientation, when talking about this, our trainer showed us pictures of a couple of different options for potential victims, and whether we should try to scare them. First, they showed us a picture of John Cena and the Great Khali, which, are big lads, so they might not be the easiest to scare. Then, they showed us a picture of a little girl in a Cinderella costume and asked if we should scare them, to which everyone enthusiastically shouted, "Yes!" It was at this moment that I knew I was going to fit in well with these people. And yes, people do bring their 6-year-olds to Halloween Horror Nights, and yes, Karens do get mad when you scare them. #worth. My personal favorite targets are what I call the sorority conga. It's a line of 20-something-year-old white girls going through with their hands on the shoulders of the girl in front of them, and usually with their faces buried in their backs. See, if you go through a haunted house looking like that, it just makes you an easy target. It's like ringing the dinner bell. I never got to topple them over like dominoes, but oh well, I guess I just have to try harder next time. But we'll get more into that in a second. Every scare actor's trigger is different, and you have a very short amount of time to get the timing and everything down. If you're a creature or anything wearing a mask, you have it pretty easy. Pop out, jerk your head around, and claw at some people before retreating. The snarling and screeching from your trigger will do the rest. If you're in an IP house, a house based on an existing property like The Shining or A Nightmare on Elm Street, they might be a bit more hands-on how you do your scares in order to appease the right holders. Original houses are a bit more lax though, and it doesn't even matter if you're not mouthing along right with the track. My trigger had me shouting something in Latin, and to this day, I have no idea what I was saying. You'll find your groove eventually, but for now, let's talk about what happens when you scare the crap out of people. Let's talk about some of my favorite scares, because even though I was arguably the least scary person in the house, I still have some good moments. The creative behind our house had a simple yet effective idea in mind. I would pop out with my first scare, which would distract people from my scene partner hitting them on the other side, which in turn would distract them from my second scare right around the corner. A nice ping pong game of scares to keep people on their toes as they're going through. Now listen closely. Here's a little lesson in trickery. If there is a gap between groups, hold off on a second before popping out when the next group comes through. Why? Because all the scaredy cats will put all their brave friends at the front in the line in hopes that the scare actors will target them. If you wait a second for the valiant knight to go by, you could get a real good scare from their wards. All my favorite scares usually came closer to the end of the night for a simple reason. It's not a constant stream of people going through. There's some gaps between people, which gives them more room to overreact. One time early in the run, I pop out and sent this girl screaming down the hall. Alright, bye, it was nice chatting with you. Wait, I'm not wearing a mask or makeup. Should I be offended that I'm scaring you as much as I am? Anyway, let me tell you about my all-time favorite scare, and it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. On the very last night of the event, I was there doing my thing when I pop out for my first trigger, and the dude bro there said, quote, "Dude, this motherfucker's not even scary." To which I thought, challenge accepted. So I slink around for my second trigger, and the dude bro is not paying attention. He's still talking up a big game to his friends, and I pop out again. And this time, he jumps so high, he nearly hits his head on the ceiling. Granted, the ceiling was as low as we were legally allowed to make it, but it was still awesome to get that sweet, sweet revenge. And now we have to talk about what happens when things go sideways. Because things will go sideways. That's just what happens when your job is to scare people who are drunk off of $12 Long Island iced teas and Bleaky cups. You'll be hard pressed to find any scare actor who goes through the entire season without getting hit at least once. Yes, I said hit. Your job is to scare these people, and sometimes that fight or flight response lands on fight. But they teach you about what to do in these situations during orientation, so let's get to it. One thing you might have noticed as a guest is that there is security all over the place. Every house has security at the front and at the back of the house, and the houses aren't allowed to operate if they are not there. If an incident arises, you'll go to the exit of the house, wave over your stage manager or a member of security, and tell them what happened. There are 4 levels of guest misconduct that will need to be reported. They are 1, 2, 5, and 10. Why they didn't just go 1, 2, 3, and 4, I will never know. Level 1 is described as unintentional maliciousness. This is you scare someone and they punch you in the shoulder. This happened to me twice over the course of the event. The punishment will range depending on how hurt you are. If you just got jabbed in the shoulder, but other than that are okay, the person in question will probably just get a warning. If you get a nosebleed or something like that, that might be more time spent talking to security. Ones are easily the most common incident you'll encounter while working at HHN. Level 2 is intentional but not malicious, which made no sense to me when I first started. Like, if you're touching me and I don't know you, I'm like, ew, stranger danger. I learned what that means when I popped out and someone just kinda caressed my cheek. It was very strange. Level 5 is intentional and malicious. If you scare a woman and her dude bro boyfriend comes up and goes, "Dude, don't scare my girlfriend," BAM! That's a level 5. This is something you'll need to write a witness statement for. This person needs to be kicked out of the park, and maybe Orange County Police will get involved. This, unfortunately, also has to deal with, sexual harassment. A lot of actors, both male and female, although mostly female, have sexy costumes, which leads to a bunch of crap you would expect it to. Like, we want you guys to have a good time and all, but if you go out of your way to harass these people, you are an awful human being. Last year, they had a Rob Zombie scare zone with some sexy dancers, and they had to position big tough guys by them to make sure no drunken creep was giving them grief. It really sucks when you see your friends having to deal with it. And finally, level 10, aka I'm willing to, up to a year from now, sit in a court of law to prosecute this person. Now luckily, I don't have any examples of the level 10 to give you because I have never heard of one happening. But the fact that this is a thing tells me that maybe it's a good thing I never had faith in humanity to begin with. Whew, that got heavy there in the last century. Let's talk about what happens at the end of the night, because let me tell you, there is no better dance floor than an empty HHN house. Sorry, Stranger Things, who still has a 2-hour wait at park close. Whenever the house is empty, you can usually see the scare actors, and maybe some of the house attendants, just dancing at each other, goofing off, and even going into each other's boo holes. That sounded wrong. Luckily, I was in a spot where I could see a guest shadow before they got to me, so I could just reset before they got there. But I have to wonder how many people came through only to accidentally see some killer chickens shucking and jiving. Clucking and jiving? Overall, the end of the night is when we goof around because we're all delirious and tired. When our final set is done, you'll head back to the break room, clock out, and take off your costume and makeup. Which I feel like should be on company time because me getting all this off is clearly not personal time. But if you get it off quick enough, you might just have time to go do one last house before you go home. And that's the life of a Halloween Horror Nights scare actor. It's a very tiring job, and yes, the 1, 2, 5, 10 systems make it sound scary, but it's a fun experience. I mean, you're getting paid to scare people, which let me tell you, after years of dealing with Karens while working rides at Disney, was such good therapy. Don't forget to like and share this video if you enjoyed it, and follow me on Facebook and Instagram, links in the description down below. I'm Chris from Orlando, and there's nothing like beating a bunch of killer chickens in Mario Kart while dressed as an emperor. Take care, y'all. One love, don't hurt nobody.